Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us, PC Live with Iyinoluwa Aboyeji. Today, we're going to talk about building the future and what's next for African tech. I think what's next for Africa is really the question. It's kind of a big conversation about where we're going. We like to think about how technology is going to affect that, but ultimately, what we're thinking about is where is Africa going? So we're looking to have an interesting conversation over the next sort of hour and a half or so. With us today is Iyinoluwa Aboyeji, who's better known as E. And so if I'm calling him E, that's because that's what a lot of people call him. He's the general partner and he's the co-founder of Future Africa, which provides capital, coaching, and community for mission-driven innovators. And he's looking to help build an African future where purpose and prosperity is within everyone's reach. Very, very small mission. Prior to founding Future Africa, he was Deputy Director General for Madam Obi Ezekwesili's 2019 presidential campaign. He's better known for helping to build and being a co-founder of Andela and Flutterwave, which are two of Africa's largest and fastest growing technology companies with serious global money and serious impact on the market from both of them. He's got a bachelor's degree in legal studies, another lawyer from University of Waterloo. And he's a World Economic Forum Young Global Leader. He's well known within the ecosystem for being a really big booster for the role of technology in moving Africa forward. He has bold opinions. He's not afraid to say them. He's a big supporter and investor in quite a number of startups, even prior to founding Future Africa. One of the startups, incidentally, is big Cabal Media. It's the parent company for TechCabal. So welcome, E. Good to have you.
Thank you, Tomiwa. And don't worry, you don't have to go easy on me because I invested in you guys, you know?
I'm not going to.
I won't block your account.
Don't worry. I ain't scared of you. E.
Awesome.
Oh no.
My brother, we did body day inside clothes, man. You see now they start blocking our websites.
2020 has been a very interesting year. We're going to come to that topic and talk about sort of how you build under these kinds of conditions, when the government sort of essentially put itself against you. But let's not start from there. Let's just start from an overview of sitting here in November, about to be December 2020, after one of the craziest years for the globe, after an impactful one for Africa. How are you feeling? Are you optimistic? Are you worried? Are you excited about the future? And what is worrying, exciting you, or making you, yeah.
No, I mean, I'll tell you this, right? I'm excited, but I'm not just excited. I'm determined. I think that's more the word, right? I'm determined. We started this year in a very interesting mode. We'd come off a pretty high 2019. No one saw any of this stuff coming. We all had to re-architect our business models and operations to, accommodate a whole new world, right? Which is why you're doing this from your house, not the office, I hope.
Exactly.
So I think it's been twofold. On the one hand, it's created incredible opportunities for the work that we do, right? Because now, by virtue of this system that has been created, we're where we are. You know what I mean? And this is what it is. So that's one element. But the other element, which I find personally extremely interesting, is the challenges. Right? It's brought to the surface all our challenges, right? The challenge of, a non-aligned government. And I have to bring it up.
I love that word. I love that.
They're not aligned with us. So, Number two, the dirt of our infrastructure challenges, right? Number three, the fact that we have to carry the country's growth, as you saw with the GDP numbers. We're now responsible for the country, whether we like it or not.
Yeah.
Right? So we're basically being forced to grow up in 1 year when we thought we had another 18, which is, I guess, is the story of the average Nigerian, right? You turn 10 years old and you become a man. And I feel like this is just accelerated puberty for us and for our industry. So the question is, are we going to rise to the occasion to meet the challenges of an Africa that's basically dependent on us? Or are we just going to complain and die? Because I think that's where we are, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and I think I love it. I think it's a great sort of like framing for it. I also love non-aligned is my favorite way to describe, government interests and the average citizen. Your interests are not aligned. The things they care about are not the things that you care about. The things that they are trying to do and solve for are not the things you are trying to solve for. But and Nigeria is obviously the example, but like for TC, we try to look at Africa.
Yeah.
So let me just ask, I mean, looking beyond Nigeria, do you see anything this year? Like, have you, so we've talked about AFCFTA. You and I are both members of the Africa Tech and Creative Group. How do you see the rest of the continent? I mean, it looks like it's been a turbulent year for the continent as well.
For the whole continent. Yeah. I mean, there are obviously a few bright spots, right? Like Ghana is a bright spot. Rwanda is a bright spot. And we're excited about what's going on there. I'm sure Togo is also a bright spot. I've seen some really interesting stuff come out of Togo. They're bright spots. But the big players, South Africa and Nigeria, are being the embarrassing buffoons they've always been, right? They're not aligned. And they need to be aligned for the continent to see the growth that we're looking for. If they're not aligned, we have problems. You know what I mean? So this is extremely important that we figure out a way to get them aligned. You know what I mean? So they have to be aligned for the continent to work. You get what I'm trying to say? So I think that's the biggest problem. It's that on a Pan-African basis, we're not seeing the results that the smaller guys who don't really have that much weight to pull from a people perspective, from a numbers perspective, from a financial resources perspective. We're not seeing their results shine through as more than just a few kind of tiny experiments, because the big guys who could have really brought heft to this, what can Africa do for the world? They aren't on the scene. They aren't ready yet. And I think that's the challenge for building the future in Africa. We got to right those ships. We got to tell South Africa, we got to tell Nigeria, we got to come together and figure out those two countries so that the rest of our continent can benefit from the windfall that this post-coronavirus global economy has. Because what is happening right now is the economy is moving, and I hope I'm not going too off topic, but we joke like this all the time. But look, from a perspective, from a global perspective, global economy perspective, you got to understand, we're moving from a globalization. This is the end of globalization to the beginning of what we call a distributed innovation economy, right? We're moving from a globalized economy to a distributed economy, which means anybody can do anything from anywhere in the world. Do you understand? Capital will determine where the cheapest and the most aligned part of the world to do stuff in will be. What coronavirus did was blow smoke on the whole premise that China is the be all and end all of the world's factory, right? Yeah. And now start to create a world where anywhere can be the be all and end all of the world's factory. But that requires an Africa that's structured and thinking very differently about the global economy, right? Yeah. And unfortunately, the leaders of the biggest economies just haven't risen to the occasion of what this new world requires. And that is our problem as a continent.
So what we're gonna do, and my people are going to have a bit of a heart attack. We're going to blow up the usual structure of this conversation. We're going to follow this conversation because this is where it's interesting. And we cover technology, but when you look at South Africa, when you look at Nigeria, when you look at where these industries are, the challenges aren't technical. Like, the talent is on ground. The people to build, the problems to solve are big enough. The market is definitely not big enough because the wallets are super tiny. And we know this. We talked about the sachetization of the economy. We can see sort of we're in our third recession in like a really, really, really short period of time. So we know that there are core problems. Yeah. Now, I'm gonna throw something at you because I think it was last year. I don't think I've heard this line from you in 2020. Last year, you were convinced, tech was going to solve everything.
It will.
Now, hold on. I moved back to Nigeria. I moved back to Nigeria in 2008.
Yeah.
In 2008, the line was, let the government just stay out of the way and private sector will fix it.
Yes. Yes.
12 years on, I
Yes.
don't know anybody who is watching the country seriously that still buys that line. And I wonder if that is the same thing that tech may come to realize, is that, and I've heard there's a counter that gets thrown to the idea of tech will solve everything. It's like, you can't tech your way out of bad infrastructure.
I don't agree, but yeah.
You can't tech your way out of fixing some fundamentals. So my question for you is, how do you see us fixing the fundamentals? And this, again, this may not be a technology conversation, but it's an important conversation. Yeah.
No, absolutely. And it actually, to be honest with you, it is a technology conversation.
So first of all, let's hear that perspective.
No, to kind of explain, to piggyback on your point, right? Yeah. I still share the same point of view as you did 12 years ago, which is if the government was willing to stay out of it, we wouldn't actually need to bother them, right? We will do our work, they can do their thing, and we'll just exist side by side. We doff our hats when we need to doff our hats. We give Caesar what Caesar belongs to Caesar, and we're all good, right? That was what I hoped we could have achieved. You know what I mean? But here we are 10 years later. It is clear that the government is not intending to stay out. So now it's war. Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Please don't use that word. Please don't use that word.
Okay. No, before they block you. No. But what I mean is, in the most peaceful sense, right? Like now we need the power because they're not going to stay out. You get what I'm trying to say? So, and obviously peaceful means only, by all means, but we got to change our mindset, which is, before our mindset was, look, if they stay out, we don't have anything to worry about. They're doing their thing over there in Abuja. We're here in Lagos, we're doing our thing. Then one motorcycle ban, then blocking websites, then claiming to regulate social media. Now we gotta get serious, right? And be like, okay, fine, you shot 3 bullets at me. Now I gotta go put on bulletproof. And then maybe eventually I gotta demobilize your guns, right? And then we got to have the conversation. So I think that's really the mindset. And that's the framing. Now, here's the thing, right? Africa is in a very interesting position, right? Which is very simple. Every major civilization that has emerged since the First World War has emerged on the back of a very concerted Marshall Plan type effort, right? In America, it was Reconstruction. In Europe, it was a Marshall Plan. That's how every country has come up. Like some guy, some big daddy somewhere believes it's in their interest to pump in billions of dollars into a country, and then it becomes rebuilt, and then we're all good to go. That's not going to happen for Africa. Let's just be very frank and honest with ourselves. One, because we're Black, and no one thinks Black people are worth that much. And number two, because the structure of the global economy is just such that these things can't happen anymore. You know what I mean? So I think we gotta think about it from the point of view of, look, we're in this situation, and this is what it is, and we acknowledge that. You understand what I'm saying? So how are we going to turn those disadvantages into opportunities? Technology provides us. I was doing some analysis. I was showing somebody, right? Our infrastructure deficit is about $380 billion or something ridiculous like that, right? New York has a bigger capital or capital expenditure budget than Nigeria and Kenya combined. So if it's a dollars issue, we've lost from day one. So this is an opportunity for us to now start thinking, how do we innovate our way out of those constraints? And the technology is now at the point where we can actually do that. And we started already with the mobile phone. Think about Africa's mobile phone industry versus the rest of the world. Telecoms is a leader in every single market in Africa. The most valuable company, every single market in Africa is a telecoms company, almost every single market, right? And so that gives you a sense of what is possible. So how do we leapfrog? And this is a continent that didn't have, 20 years ago, we're talking 20 years ago, I remember growing up and having to line up to speak to my father in Israel, right? Like, I mean, I grew up, right? So I was born without a mobile phone. We had naming ceremony, and then here we are having a conversation from halfway across the country with the internet. That's where we are. So we gotta now basically, I mean, my mindset is we gotta take over the power, right? And then build Africa into this place where it's possible to leapfrog these challenges and contribute effectively to the world. And you said one thing about the saturation of the economy. That's a very important point. You see, one thing we have to understand is we are not the markets.
Yeah.
Labor. And now we understand the better. The reason we have numbers is because we are labor. Do you understand what I'm saying? But if we're not preparing the labor for the market that exists off the shores, then we're not serious. And that's what every government needs to be focused on. How do we mine African human capital to contribute to the world in the way that China did for manufacturing in the last 30, 40 years? How do we do that for services in the next 30, 40 years? Yeah. And that's really what the topic is. Do you get what I'm saying? That's the focus. And once we have that clarity of focus across the continent, we'll be making different decisions, completely different decisions, and understanding the world very differently.
I really like that. I think that's a really important point is we're not the market. We're actually the labor force. In the same way, China is a huge market, but really they were the labor for the rest of the world. So I think that's a brilliant point. Really, really important point. But I want to ask you, you said we've got to take the power. Who's taking what power from who? What power do we need to actually fix this thing? Well, what is the power that we need to take?
Now, first of all, we got to think about this as a long march, right? There's no Jerry Rawlings type revolution coming. Nope. We're not interested in those things, right? Primarily because you know, this is the problem, right? Logically, you create a vacuum that people who already have the security architecture in their hands can take. So what you just do, you open the door and somebody else comes and swoops in and, and collects all the work that you've been working for. So that won't work. We got to take the power the way we know how. And what does that mean? It means that at the end of the day, across all our users, across all all the people that we impact in the tech industry, I did an audit on my operations. Do you know that, small as I am, our companies employ 12,000 people across the continent? So we have some small pockets of power. Those of us that have and those of us that understand the tools of modern media, Facebook, Twitter, you know, these are the platforms, and the old guard don't get it. So that's where we start, right? I always get very frustrated about, you know, when people start talking about politics like grassroots. I'm like, nah, I love the grassroots, don't get me wrong. But, you know, at the end of the day, there are 23 million people in Nigeria on Facebook. Let's start there. We don't have to go to the grassroots. If we turn out 10 million of those 23 million people for the next elections, right? You've taken the power. Yeah. You have. So let's not, and you see, the old guard gets it, and that's why they're trying to use the tools that we developed against us. Do you get what I'm saying? They're afraid of those tools. They understand it very well. But again, there is a gap in knowledge, quite obviously, between the way these platforms work and the way they think they should work. You know, they think you can pay your way to the trending stuff, and that's just not really how the world works. They don't really get data in the way that we understand it. So it's about us now intentionally training our power. First of all, coming together. That's very important. I saw somebody make that point in the chat. Coming together, training our power on the things that we know we influence. So everybody now knows, okay, if you're tech or you like tech or you use tech, this is the way to go. Walk in it, as the Bible will say. You understand what I'm saying? And then if we do that, before you know it, I mean, a lot of our younger peers, right? A lot of our younger peers look up to us in the tech industry because they see us as a clearer path to prosperity than they look at the politicians or the corrupt business people and so on and so forth. We haven't leaned into that strength and that leadership mantle that we've been given. We're still acting like we're kids with some nice tech geeky stuff. We're statesmen. And then we got to transform into that mindset and be like, look, I understand where you're coming from, Oga, but this is what my people want. And if you don't want to give it to us, we'll see. I don't know if you get my point. And that's the transformation that we need to have across the continent with the leading entrepreneurs, rather than just bitching on Twitter, because that's not going to change anything.
Yeah. Okay. I think it's really interesting. I think the leaning into your power is interesting. I guess what's interesting for me about it is that it means that beyond building your company, which is what most of us want to do. I mean, it's like,
I mean, me too.
My work, let me build this company. But I guess, what's the role of a tech CEO? What's the role of a founder? What's the role of, I mean, tech bro? Is tech CS a thing?
It has to be. Look.
What's the role for me working, at Africa's Talking, sitting at my desk every day, me walking, what's my role? Beyond doing my work, building my product.
Yeah.
What else?
So this is a fantastic question because, for me, I think the biggest challenge the ecosystem has is that it doesn't believe it has a purpose.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It doesn't believe it has a purpose. It doesn't believe it has a purpose. It doesn't believe it has principles. It believes it's a tool. And that's how you get in trouble, right? Because, you're a tool, you don't have a purpose. You don't understand that technology is for the emancipation of the people, right? Then you get in trouble, right? Because any government comes to you with some random request, you say yes. And that's how we get into bank CEOs blocking accounts because they think they exist. I mean, the truth of the matter is, the bank CEO said, look, we're not obeying this order. F you. Nothing will happen. That's it. It's really,
Okay. We all agreed,
yeah. So at the end of the day, we got to realize, because before we make the mistakes of the last generation, we got to get purpose right. What does tech exist for? Technology exists to better the lives of people. If I'm building a product and that product doesn't have measurable impact on people's lives, or if I'm being told to do something that I know would have a negative impact on people's lives, what am I going to do in that moment? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
To write that shit, to say we're not part of that. So I almost feel like, I hate to put it this way, but my dream is a world where we get to a place where tech CEOs sign a charter saying, hey, right? If we're asked to do X, Y, and Z, we will not do it. Just know that for a fact. And we will support candidates who espouse these values at elections and blah, 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 blah. Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
And we will protect ourselves from inevitable blowback because we have the tools to. We have decentralized finance, we have internet and VPNs, we have, you know what I mean? We can play this cat and mouse game extremely well. So no problem. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that's where we need to get to. So we need to agree on a purpose as an ecosystem, right? That's number one. Number two, we got to agree that we have to have impact beyond our industry, right? Yeah. This tech thing cannot just be about making us millionaires, dollar millionaires, right? It has to be about, like, how do we improve the lives of people? How do we make our sector more inclusive than the previous sector? So it can't just be, like you said, tech bros. We got to bring in the sisters, we got to bring in the young people. We got to bring in the old people. We got to bring in everybody who shares our values to come and participate in this tech reach. And we got to think about ourselves as enablers, not kings. We got to think about ecosystem builders. You understand what I'm saying? Not kings. Yeah. So I think when we get in that mindset, we start to build that armada where it's like they're everywhere and they're nowhere. And so there's no point fighting them. Let's just have a conversation. Do you understand? Because and then we got to lean into our power. So, when I mean lean into our power, I mean the tools that we have, right? How are we using them to advance the common good, right? How are we using them to enable people to make a living, bring people out of poverty, right? Everybody should have, people call it CSR, but I think it's our core of our business for us to enable other people, right? Through training people in these new economy skills, right? People forget, people didn't just wake up one morning and start assembling cars in 1920s America. They were trained to do it. And people like Henry Ford insisted they be paid a living wage while being taught to assemble cars. So this idea that, money is the overarching goal of our ecosystem, that idea has to just die. It just has to die. We can't exist for just money. We gotta be mission. We can't afford to be just money. We gotta be mission. You know what I mean? And then the final thing is this, right? We gotta productively engage government. And by productively engaging government, it doesn't mean sitting down in a room and agreeing to everything they say. Neither does it mean bitching on Twitter or Facebook all the time, right?
Yeah.
It means that we gotta recognize, okay, we're leaders now. We're not just like a group of young men and women who have stumbled on tech and some success. We got to think about the country, right? And how is the work we do going to grow the country? And when it's not growing the country, we own our voice because of the platforms we use. They're not bound by geography or by regulatory or all the other things that they think they can use to hold us back. So we can speak truth to power when it's necessary. But then we got to be at the table and have a conversation. You understand what I'm saying? So I think those are really kind of the pressure points, right? When we have an industry that understands it has a purpose, when we understand that we got to be mission focused, not money focused, when we understand we got to sit at the table and have conversations with power and say, guys, I understand where you're coming from, but we got our own power and this is what we intend to do. And we're united in that resolve. Then we'll start to see things shifting across the continent because the continent is waiting for us. Who else, which other industry is providing nearly as much hope as we have to the continent? None. You can't look anywhere and say, oh, this is going really well, except in tech. I'm not just blowing smoke up our asses. This is just what the numbers say. You know what I mean? So we got to lean into that power and exploit it for the betterment of the people.
I think, look, you make a lot of points that I think really, really matter. And I really like the sort of being deliberate, being about mission, not just money. I think a lot of people feel that way. I want to jump into a question about power blocks, because you mentioned that if every bank CEO said that we're not going to do it, CBN would back down.
Yeah, they would have to.
They would have to. And so I want to talk about the connection between the tech industry and its leadership and the old power blocks, because your FMCGs are still super powerful. Your bank MDs are super powerful. They're controlling huge sectors of the economy.
Yeah.
They have real influence and weight with the government. In a sense, you see them as kind of hand in glove partners with the government. And when the government misbehaves, if they don't call the government out, then it continues what it's doing. And so I guess the question for me is, where are we getting it wrong in terms of building the connection between those guys? Because a fascinating conversation for me, when to think about is when you look at the sachetization of the economy, when you look at our poverty indices going south over the last 8 years or so, if I'm building an FMCG, if I'm Nigerian breweries, if I'm Nestle, I'm looking at this economy and I'm going, these people are getting poorer. How am I ever going to make any more money? I'm like forcing myself to contort myself to make my product smaller and smaller. More money.
Yeah.
Aren't they better served by a large, thriving, growing economy? And shouldn't they be partnered with us to build that rather than partnered with the governments to continue what it is that it's doing right now? So where are we getting that wrong in that engagement?
I'll be honest with you. I think that is, you just touched on a very important point, which is, I'm going to be the opposite here, right? We're not engaging them, we're fighting them.
Okay.
We're not engaging them, we're fighting them. And so they got to be like, well, I got a thriving industry to build and these fintechs are about to eat my lunch, at least so they say, and they've got all these billion-dollar companies behind them, foreign capital, I don't know where it's coming from, building, well, I'm going to take my chances with the government. You know what I mean? So, because at the end of the day, I got shareholder return to worry about, and it's your father's pension and people's money, and I can't just let it go. However, if we're building relationships of trust with them, and here's where they also have to come across the aisle. We're not kids anymore. We've had to grow up very fast. You understand what I'm saying? And so there's a need for that kind of an approach to engagement that sees us more as collaborators rather than as like vendors or, so on and so forth. But there needs to be a collaboration. there needs to be a collaboration between us and them. And whether it's us reaching out to them or them reaching out to us, or we finding ways to reach out to each other through the different channels we already have, there has to be that come to Jesus moment where everybody in corporate Nigeria today understands, look, there are new players on the block. They have different ideas about how things run, and we agree with them like maybe 45% of the way. You know what I mean? But to the extent that they care about a better Nigeria, we can take their ideas, right? But we understand they're a block. Now, without us coming together, first of all, as an industry, we can't go to them because we're all going to be saying all sorts of random different things. Everybody's looking out for what partnership they can strike with one person. And, generally, if you notice, they operate as a block because they understand that's how you build influence that can engage governments, right? We got to build our own block first before we then engage other blocks. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? So I think that's really the precursor. Now, once we do that, when we go to them, we're coming from the point of view of, look, this country is our country. Yes, we're incorporated in Delaware. It's because of that condition, COSA. But this is our country. This is where we want the money to sit. So let's help you. Let's help you. Okay, what do you need help with? Do you understand what I'm saying? Okay, we'll share this information with you. We'll show you how this works. I mean, I speak at a lot of corporate Nigeria events. It's not because they don't pay me, but I do it because they require education about some of the things that we take for granted. And I'm happy to share with them, here's how it works, because they need to understand how it works. You understand? For them to be able to risk capital and process and all this stuff on it. And if we're able to build that with them, that rapport, that relationship of trust, then we're able to, and in private conversations, remove the cameras. I'll be honest with you, 95% agree with everything we do. 95%. Yeah. Publicly, they can't say it. But if you see the levels to which they'll tell you, man, you guys, you get balls, but no wahala. To the extent that we can back you, we'll back you, and then when you people go, where you go to Express, we'll tell you that you're going to the Express, so we can reel you back. No problem. But anyhow, we're together. But we need to be more intentional about building those relationships. I think that's what the issue is that we're coming at this from the point of view of it's us versus them, as opposed to we have a nation to build together. How can we innovate our way there? And that's why we're having the problems we're having. Gotcha.
Super useful, super useful. I mean, I think this freewheeling conversation is important, but let's drill down to some specifics and let's talk a little bit about the work that we are actually doing. Future Africa in terms of the way you think about investing, in terms of the way you think about engaging the market, in terms of the way you think about what companies are worth investing in.
That's a great question. So, Future Africa started out as a community. Many of you probably saw it, Future.Africa was just like a community. And our original plan was just, I just come off a very tough election. I learned some hard-won lessons about Nigeria. You know what I mean? I learned some, I feel like I did not know Nigeria until I helped somebody run for president in Nigeria. I visited every part of Nigeria I visited. I didn't even get to the polls because we were threatened. But we got close. We saw it was an education for us that this is the reality of our country. And I just felt like, man, to be honest there, and I'll only say this here because it's you, Tomiwa, and I know people are watching, but it's the truth. If we had won, I would have been terrified.
Good reason. With very good reason.
I was hoping we didn't win because I was like, man, this is gonna be a lot of work. I don't think people who run for president actually understand that. Running this country is not easy.
It's not easy.
So when I came out of that,
we're not going to do a full-on political conversation here because
I know. So let me come back to tech.
We got to win some smaller offices and some smaller things.
So after I came out of that, I was like, man, I got to, first of all, to participate in the election, I had to resign, obviously. So I did, right? So I was jobless. I ran away. Actually, I went abroad. I was like, I'm not coming back because this is crazy. I don't see how this country can move forward. And then I had to come back because the problem kept gnawing at me. But what I wanted to do was have a conversation. And then it just occurred to me that the conversation people wanted to have was a conversation in action. They didn't want to just speak English about their problems. They wanted somebody to solve it. And that was how we began the evolution into what we now call the Fund for Africa's Future. So we do business as Future Africa, but we're really at our heart of fund. And then second step, okay, fund, we have to raise money. How do we raise money? And obviously our instincts are, oh, let's go and beg DFIs and high net worth individuals and all that. And for me, you know, because I'm a proud Nigerian, I wanted some local money to enter, you know? So I started researching, wait, I have had this long relationship with banks because of my old job. CEOs wanted to back whatever I wanted to do next. But the question was, are they even allowed to do it? And then I realized they weren't allowed to do it. The law did not allow them to do it. That has changed, by the way. The current BOFIA allows them to commit up to 10% of their assets in venture funds. But before then, they were not allowed to invest in venture funds. So I had to rely on foreign guys. And the thing about the foreign guys is they want different things. You know?
Alignment.
They want different things. And I'll break it down to two things, right? Some of them want impact. Some of them want profit, right?
Yeah.
But the guys who want profit, they look at the macro environment and they're like, you can't give me profit, just logically. I don't believe you can. So let's not have this conversation. I'll invest personally and you can go off on your own. The guys who want impact are like, we don't think it's possible for you to get profits. So, you know, let's just do this impact thing and then call it a day, right? Yeah. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, I just spent the last 5-7 years of my life making money for you guys, and you still don't believe
I can give money to be made. No.
I felt personally insulted. So I was like, okay, fine. Do your thing. I'll do my thing. So that was how we now had to recreate a capital structure. And we started doing more research. And then we realized 31% of Nigerians want to invest in alternative assets. Obviously, Corona came and forced us into that line much faster than we thought we would have to go. Because people had money they would usually spend on dinners, on parties, sitting in their bank accounts. Treasury bills were diving. And they were like, Iyin, please now, take my money. Take it, please. So we now had to figure out the structure that we figured out, which is very simple, right? It's a co-investment model. It's new on the continent. It's a membership. You pay $1,000 to become a member of the Future Africa Collective. And then you can invest. We send you a deal memo every 2 weeks. You look at the deal memo. You like the deal, you invest. You don't like the deal, you skip, wait for the next deal, right? Very simple. And then we, based on demand, some people were like, look, your deals go so fast, because some deals go out in 3 hours. Last week, we did a deal that went out in 30 minutes. So they're like, look, it's too much competition. I'm not comfortable. So we created a rolling fund that invests in everything that we invest in, you know? So if we invest in something, you can get exposure to it.
Gotcha.
That's basically what we do now. So, the core of our business is basically capital. And then after we invest in the company, as you know, we provide coaching. So support on deals, on, business development, on pitching other investors, on financial modeling, whatever you require, we'll try and help you find a way to do it. And then community, we help you remain in a community of people who are aligned on building the future of Africa. So that means you can find investors, you can find friendly partners, you can find friendly government officials. And that's basically how we're building this thing, right? That's what we do.
So let me ask you about the people investing in your fund and,
give
this information. Are you, is it all tech bros? Is it people who've already made money in technology?
Nope.
Is it bankers? Are you finding HNIs engaged? Because that's a conversation we have.
So I'll say we're kind of going on the adoption cycle. Our earliest adopters were people who worked in tech, right? Very, very simply.
For obvious reasons.
For obvious reasons, right? So people who worked in tech, both abroad and in Nigeria, would be like, you know what I mean? You're clearly, you know what you're doing. Take my money, and they can evaluate their opportunities as well. So that was very important to them, that we are putting down the opportunities, and they could evaluate it. Then we kind of moved to like middle class, people who worked in oil companies. So they had money, but they were worried about what Naira meant for their wealth. So we're like, okay, I can put 5% of my assets here and see how it works, right?
Gotcha.
Now we've kind of got into the early innings of the HNI, the more risk-taking guys, right? So, you know, they're very good, actually. They're very good. You know, they want to put more money. We have to caution them and be like, look, we're not, no, don't put $1 million. Just calm down. Start with 100K. Then we'll tell you how we'll be going from there, you know? So, you know, so that's where we are now. And then we might actually have to build like co-investment models for those guys. So we'll see how that goes. But, you know, we're kind of moving up the adoption curve little by little. But now we have 125 members. People can join by just going on future.africa/collective and join. It's open to people from all over the world. So the global product, because we have a lot of diaspora. I think we're like 40% diaspora and 60% from Africa on the continent. So, you know.
So future in Africa, if you have money you want to invest. How about those that want to collect money?
No, same website. So you go there, you apply. Now, in terms of our process, like we have a two things. We have a defined, at least for this time, we have 4 areas that we focus on, right? So first of all is technology and talent. Right? So really it's companies that are either building out new service models by leveraging distributed talent, or people that are building technology like deep research and applied research and stuff like that. Then we have infrastructure, physical and digital infrastructure. Then we have media, where you fall in. People that are doing, we're doing a deal next year, so fingers crossed, you know.
Bring it on.
Yeah. We're doing a deal next year, so if you want to invest in more of this stuff, you know, come have a conversation with us. And then after that, we have the final thing is environment, the environment, and that's where our agri investments go in, right? The agri investments, recycling investments, and stuff like that. So those are like those are kind of like our 4 kind of major areas. Now, in terms of how we evaluate companies, one thing we've said from the day one is basically, you know, we're not the kind of venture firm that says yes or no, right? We're more like a threshold-based venture firm. So what do I mean by that? So when you come in, we evaluate you by criteria, which we call TD3, right? So talent, like who are the founders, how good are they, how much do they understand about what they're trying to do, you know, track record, all that stuff, right? Fun stuff, right? Then we evaluate data. So first of all, either you're bringing us data or we're finding data ourselves about the market, about what is really going on. Is there a market here? You know, can we actually make money? We do your financial modeling for you if you've not done it. You know, try and figure that stuff out. Then design, right? How's the product designed to make it easier for people to do stuff? You know what I mean? Very important. Then distribution. You know, do we or do you have the channels, whether it's in terms of celebrity endorsements or partners with large corporates, to distribute this product, right? Or you have expertise in marketing or whatever that can help you do this. So, I mean, those are the things that we typically think about. And then we put people on that spectrum. And then depending on how much capital we have, we invest in the top of the funnel and go down.
Okay.
And then for those, and for those who...
What that means. Explain, what does that mean?
So it means like, basically, let's just assume we evaluate a startup on that metric, and then we come up with a score. Maybe there are other extenuating factors, like do they actually need capital right now? Do we have more time? You know, whatever. And then based on that, we make a decision to invest at that time or not, right? But what we can do also is that if we don't even put in capital, we can still offer you coaching and community. So we can still help you with closing business deals. A lot of founders will tell you before we even put money in them, we probably give them deal value more than the money we were putting in, which is why they will always take the capital. Do you get what I'm trying to say? So those are the other things that we kind of try and help to, even before we invest capital into the company.
Gotcha. Okay. So I wanted to ask you, you mentioned physical and digital infrastructure. The physical of that is what caught my attention.
Yeah.
So what does that look like? What kind of companies or what kind of, you know?
We're very early days, very, very early days in the physical, right? But the kind of things we're thinking about, you know, we're thinking a lot about remote work and infrastructure for remote work, actually, because we think that that's the biggest opportunity the country has. So you're going to hear, I can't say too much now because they're still in development, but our Talent City initiative is housing a bunch of project finance and physical infrastructure things that we want to do. where we're trying to build kind of islands of sanity for people who kind of want to leave Lagos and go somewhere where they can better access infrastructure that helps them do more remote work. We have ongoing projects in Ekiti, some in Cross River, but very early, we're still kind of working through that. But there are other things. I mean, like even in Lagos, right? Like one of the projects that I'm excited about is a cable car project that we're working on in Lagos. I mean, so there's stuff going to be in Lagos.
Are you guys going to actually complete your own? Because there's one train system that I'm not going to mention that has been going on for 16 years.
No. Well, it's not government funded. It's not government funded. God forbid, it's not government funded. But we're planning to finish this one. So I mean, it's going to take a while for people to get used to physical infrastructure as an investment. But I think you can't build bits without understanding atoms. Yeah. You understand what I'm saying? And I think that has been the mistake that the tech industry has made over the last 10 years, is that we thought naively that we could build bits. But it's like, dude, fiber has to connect your customers to you. You know? You can't just like show up on the seed, you know, like it's not Holy Spirit now. Calm down.
I'll just ask you. So we talk about the rails, you know, like what are the rails that you need? And so, you know, telco was one rail. They've built it, you know. Well, still a lot of work to do, but at least we've put stuff to Lagos business, you know, a few places.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, Ekiti wants you to come and do business.
Yeah.
My people in Oshu, let's talk now. But so we've done telco. Yeah. You see payments as a rail and a lot of work kind of going on in that space. Yeah. Obviously, like you said, in terms of atoms, the major rails are physical infrastructure, roads, trains, transportation. Yeah. All that stuff really, really matters. And again, it's not traditionally been thought to be the work of the tech industry to touch that stuff.
Yeah.
So you're saying that you are thinking about it differently and that some of that now is coming into your purview because you just need it.
But it's still tech. Okay. It's still tech. Yeah, that's the thing. It's still tech. And that, I think that's a mistake, right? It's that, look, let me tell you, we have three fundamental challenges in this country when you analyze it completely to the end. And I'm sorry, this is a very Nigeria conversation, but Nigeria is a template for
Africa. Sorry,
guys. It's copy and paste. And we invest across the continent. But these are the three problems we have. Number one, it is too difficult to make things in Nigeria, right? Yeah. Whether on the internet or off the internet. It's easier to do it on the internet, but off the internet, it's even more difficult. And you can't just make things on the internet. I mean, what kind of economy is that? Would the people that earn money on the internet, when they go and they will buy clothes now, they will buy shoes, they will buy, you know. So who's making those things?
Go out without being harassed.
Can't buy things, right? So it's too hard to make things in Nigeria. It's too hard to move things in Nigeria. Things and people, very hard, right? So expensive, so hard. And then it's too hard to grow things in Nigeria.
Yeah.
So when we think about our thesis for our infrastructure arm, we're looking for infrastructure that talks to those three things. Infrastructure for people who make things, right? Infrastructure for people who move things, right? Infrastructure for people who grow things, right? Whether it's agriculture or business. You understand what I'm trying to say? So I think thematically, the things that can help us do those things are tech. They're tech things. Whether it's in terms of raising the financing, that's a tech opportunity. Okay. Whether it's in terms of ticketing and making sure money goes where it needs to go. Do you understand? Whether it's in terms of supporting with advice or with resources or with talents, those who are trying to do those things. That's all tech. So it's not just about putting cement on the floor. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? It's about like, how are you going to finance that cement? How are you going to make sure that the cable car runs on time? How are you going to make sure, these are things that are very important.
Gotcha. Okay, let me jump into some of the questions that we received kind of ahead of time from some of the audience members. So as an investor, like, what has there been a big miss? We know some of the big wins.
There've been many. There've been many.
Investment mistake.
Well, I mean, I don't look at them as mistakes because I think my approach to investing is really that I try to help everybody, even when they compete with my portfolio. so I don't really, I wouldn't say I mean, they're not misses in the sense that, I thought they were stupid or whatever. My demeanor when it comes to entrepreneurs is everything is possible, right?
Yeah.
Now the question is, do I have money to invest? That's where the wahala starts, and I have to make choices because I'm not Dangote. So I mean, that's where the cookie crumbles. But in terms of misses, they're not misses in the sense that I thought they were crazy people or anything. It was just like, look, I prioritized one investment over the other based on my circumstances, and maybe I should have made other choices. So, for example, I mean, Paystack is one. I didn't invest. I went to Flutterwave
You were
instead.
competing with them at the time.
So I couldn't, I mean, naturally, right? I know the people, they're my people, I mean, we talk all the time, but I didn't invest, right? Even though I could have. I would say, there are other startups, but here's what I would say. It's actually very difficult to talk about misses, primarily because we have not even gone to the point where they're actually, big successes.
They're still on the journey.
They're all still on their journey. But I do wish earlier on, I had found a way to get more resources into. The biggest miss has been I should have started this maybe after Andela.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, so right now, do you feel like you've got the resources for every deal you would want to do?
No, hell no.
Do you think? I mean, so I like with this model that you have right now, do you feel like if you saw 20 good deals next year, you could do 20 good deals? Or what number of deals could you do before, you start to stretch?
Okay, well, I'll say based on this year's numbers, we could do 20 deals next year.
Okay.
Based on this year's numbers. I think that's fine.
Does that require you to build your back office bigger?
Yeah. Big vision for us. We need more members. We need to build back office. We need to, we need to provide better support because I don't think we will make money by just giving companies money. We have to actually support them. And I think that's where we still have a lot of ways to go there, and that's what we need, So we're working on how do we get the resources to build those things. But I'll tell you, we could do 20. I want to be much bigger in scale. You get what I'm saying? I think that's my dream. My dream is like I want more scale. So 20 is not enough in my mind. Maybe 20 for each category. You know what I mean? So I want to do like 100 a year, and then maybe another 1,000 smaller companies we write 25 to 50K checks too, because we have that comes out of our rolling fund. So we have like much smaller opportunities where we write 25 to 50K checks for folks, right? So that you just kind of manage. You kind of have to manage a number of these things, but we have a long way to go. We just started. We're impressed by the results. I mean, last quarter we did $1 million. I think altogether this whole year we'll probably end up somewhere in the kind of $2 million range or so. We'll see, but I mean, we still have a long way to go, right? A long way to go.
Gotcha. Okay. Someone's asking about the distribution of your ticket sizes. What's the smallest you've done? What's the biggest you've done?
Yeah, smallest we can do is 25K. So we can't do lower than 25K. The biggest we've done is 280,000.
Okay. All right. Cool.
We'll do quite a number of smaller ones, and then we'll do obviously a few bigger ones. On the average, though, we'll do 100K.
Fair enough. Someone, Anne Anumba is asking, it states that you need to earn $200,000 annually. Is that fixed for Future Africa? Is that your revenue target?
We're working, yeah. So we're working on something. So what we're trying to do is, that's a US accreditation condition. So if you're in the US and you want to invest based on SEC rules, security, and because we're regulated as well, right, in the US. So we have to comply by that. But if you're an international investor, there's something called a Reg S exemption. So we're building a platform, hopefully, with AngelList or somebody else, that would enable us to actually activate Reg S exemption. So if you don't live in the US, you wouldn't have to comply by that 250K income back. But we're working on it. It's a process to get the letters, to get the exemptions and all that. And that would really open up the market.
Okay. So Tracy Ehigiato wants to know at what stage you invest in businesses. Idea, early growth stage. I think that's
Yeah,
kind of
that's a great question. Like I said, we don't tend to take a hard yes or no on anything. So we see an idea, provided it's not ridiculous or the founder isn't serious, we'll take a good look at it and say whether we want to invest or not. We've invested with one guy or two people with a PowerPoint before, mostly because we trusted the founder expertise, and then we've gone all the way to profitable business, spitting out tons of cash as well. So I think it's really a function of us, where you fall in our rubric, which is not just about it. That said, our preference is to invest in businesses that are already live. So if you've already launched, we can learn a lot about you and how you look at things and view things and build things. And that's a huge data point for us when we're thinking about investing, whether you're launched or not. If you haven't launched, it's a much higher bar to scale. And it will depend on, how good your founding team is.
Yeah, okay. There's another question, which is Marana Ibokwe wants to know, do you have a specific fund or a specific focus on climate-friendly, green-focused investors, or are all your investments, do they kind of look at ESG criteria?
We don't do ESG, but we have a focus on the environment. So we like to support companies that are working on the environment. We have a few in our pipeline that we're extremely excited about. And we're trying to find, one of the things we think about when we invest in a company is actually also down the line capital, because we don't have all the capital in the world. And one of the biggest values we can add to any company we invest in, other entrepreneurs will tell you, is that we make it easy for you to raise your next round. Because we kind of have a good reputation in the industry for picking winners, or people who can win. I don't think they're not always winners, but we pick people who people believe can win. Even though people ignore the fact that we actually work very hard to help them win, but let's ignore that for a bit. But basically, we because of our reputation, we like to look for down the line. And I think where we've suffered with the climate environment businesses we've invested in is that it's been very hard to find down the line capital. But these are problems that we're trying to fix now by partnering with other organizations. So I think we'll get there.
Okay, all right. I'm trying to ask the questions around the fund very specifically so that we get those, and then we'll get to a couple of more interesting ones.
Yeah.
Not that the fund's not interesting, it's very interesting. What's
the my day job is how I feed more of me. That's all.
What sort of equity proportion do you take in startups?
So we generally, we have a venture building capacity in the organization. So those we take a lot higher. So that means like we built the business with you. That's different. But in general, we're unlikely to take more than 10% of your business. Gotcha. Highly unlikely. Yeah. It's just not what we do.
Cool. Someone wants to know, if I invest quarterly, how do I get my returns?
That's a great question.
Yeah, critical. How does the money come back?
How does the money come back? So every quarter is a brand new fund. Don't ask us how we do the accounting. We have a very good fund management team at AngelList. And they're globally renowned for doing this. So ignore that for a bit. But it's a little bit tricky. Every quarter is a new fund. So let's say in the first quarter of this year, I invested in Paystack, and you put in your money. The minimum is $5,000 a quarter, right? Yeah. So you put in your 5K, right? Next quarter, Q2, maybe, God forbid, like you had maybe a family emergency or something, and that 5K didn't show up. You now ignored Q2. Right? Then Q3 you invested, right? Paystack gets bought by Stripe. You make money if you invested in Q1. Yeah. However, if we invested in Paystack in Q2, you won't make any money.
Gotcha.
So that's how it works. So you actually have to invest consistently. Yeah. So, but keep in mind though, last quarter we invested in 9 companies. So you got access to every single one of those 9 companies. So you're unlikely to lose. If we're being consistent, right? But it can happen, is what it is. How do you get your money out? We have 3 ways we see exits with companies we invest in. Number one is obviously we see exit through the lens of secondaries. So we typically have a rule: when a company gets to $100 million valuation, we go check with the investors in that company, co-investors in that company, whether they want to exit. And if they want to exit, we facilitate that process so they get some money out. Because I just feel like for us, we're willing to take seed stage risk, but I don't know if $100 million plus were equipped to support companies beyond that point. So what a lot of investors do and what we advise they do is like, look, if we get, again, no one knows if those opportunities will be available, but we try our best to make them available. But what we just try to do is say, look, take off the money you invested so you can invest it in another company and then leave the rest as free floats, right? So that's typically our approach. Then obviously you have acquisition. So anybody's guess when that happens, right? We'll try our best. We have relationships to try and put things together, but who knows, right? Yeah. And then IPO, which I'm actually excited about. So I'm seeing some deals. Like I'm looking at a way to get more companies on the Nigerian Stock Exchange, Growth Board particularly, and then AIM as well. Okay. So we're trying to build capacity in that department of supporting our companies to get on those exchanges and to deepen the stock market as well as to provide liquidity for our co-investors. So that, I mean, those are kind of three ways that we intend to do this.
Gotcha. Okay, so I think one more question along the lines of just how the fund works. Someone wants to know, is there an option where investors get to split the 5K minimum investment threshold across like 5 people? This is from my
So long as I don't know about it.
Jim, I think you guys have to put the money
you have to put it back together, and then you don't come together as one person. Because the truth is, the reason why we do that 5K, my dream is a day when, you know, I can tell you with $1. Because I mean, for me, part of this stuff is sorry to use this language, but it's actually a big fuck you to the establishment, right? Like for me, I mean, part of it for me is that's the motivation. It's like, you guys don't believe we can make money, no problem. We'll make money for the Mekunu. Then you guys can come and pay. Do you understand what I'm saying? You can come and pay. You can come and pay up. You understand what I'm saying? So I mean, part of it for me is to get us there. But again, admin is a real cost. You know what I mean? So I have to think about that. But I'm sure over time it will become lower and lower and lower. So just come together as your friends first. Do it. We don't typically police that stuff. We actually encourage it, to be honest. But yeah, and then do what you need to do.
But okay, so let's get into some kind of broader questions. Someone named Cephas wants to know, how do you view Africa Nigeria seed series A VC ecosystem, the VC ecosystem? I mean, and his last question is, or her, I think it's a he. Is there a concern that most VC investment is coming from overseas? I think that's it.
Yeah. Let me start with the last question. I don't really have a concern. I just think that, you know, as part of our impact on the broader society, if we're not creating wealth for people who live next to us, you know, if we're not creating wealth for our brothers and sisters, I mean, that's if we really believe what we're doing is supposed to be creating wealth, right? If you think it's Yahoo, by all means, continue collecting the money from abroad. But if you have the conviction that look, we're creating incredible amounts of wealth, then, you know, we should make an active effort to ensure that, you know, people in our society benefit from that wealth that we're creating, right? We make them richer. You know, people who are shareholders in Facebook and Google and so on, they're not foreigners, right? You understand what I'm saying? At least in the public markets, and mostly Americans who Facebook and Google have created an environment to create wealth for. So I think for me, that's where I'm coming from. It's not really a concern, you know, money will go where money will go, but I want my brother and my sister's Naira, as well as, you know,
I think that's a really important thing that people need to understand, is like the way to build more, to get more local capital involved, to build more for the future, is more people have to make money out of these deals, more people locally, because then more people locally have cash and believe in the ecosystem and will reinvest. Everybody that has made stock money, those guys, they're not going to keep it under their mattress now. They're not going to oil and gas. They're going to invest.
They're not going to Banana Island. They are going to put the money back in. So that's one. Yeah. So I think that's one thing. In terms of the ecosystem, I'll be honest, I'm disappointed that the VC ecosystem is not taking enough risk.
Okay, all right.
I think that's my biggest challenge. And I think I showed the numbers, you know, based on our own data, but other people have come up with other data. Less than 1% of funding into venture funds, even as we've gone sky high, you know, over the last 4 years, Less than 1% has gone into seed stage. And we're an economy that particularly needs that seed stage because people don't have savings to invest in startups, right? People need food, people have responsibilities. You know, we need seed stage innovation. So I'm worried that the ecosystem is actually not taking enough risk. And that's one of the things where we want to actually step in and provide more resources to people taking risk. Because you will never have a Paystack or a Flutterwave if somebody didn't risk their $500,000 in the first round. You get what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
So we got to be thinking that way. And also it's promoting this racist stereotype about white founders being capable. Meanwhile, white founders are just better funded. That's all it is. Yeah. It's not even like a fight. It's just like, look, the reason why you're seeing white founders raise more money in later stage is because they're better funded at seed stage because they come from ecosystems where people are willing to take that risk. Yeah. Where the white boy going into Kenya to build a startup is not seen as like Otiyawiri or you're mad. They're like, you're taking risk. Let's take the risk together. So how can we build a similar ecosystem for our own founders, solving our own problems, which we understand well, not to even talk of going to the UK. You understand what I'm trying to say? So I think it's really just that we need to just build that seed. And I think what you'll find is that once you have that seed stage in, and some companies are doing very well, the rest of the market actually works fine, to be very honest. People criticize VCs a lot, but you know, they work fine. They actually are willing to invest post that point. Yeah. But somebody has to take seed stage risk. That's the problem.
Gotcha. I've got an interesting question here, which is in Kenya and other countries where MNOs, mobile money, are very successful, native fintech tends to remain tiny. Do you think CBN's strategy to block MNOs and mobile money early on helped the fintech industry in Nigeria? It's interesting.
Yes, I think it did. However, I would say, so here's the thing, right? I think it's important to also understand the nature of these of the beast that is fintech, which is that everyone is very fixated on what the platform can do, right? And not what one can build on top of it. And I think the problem in all these other markets has been to give full credit to the CBN, particularly this CBN. They actually have been very open to innovation, more so than I've seen anywhere else. They get a lot of knocks for stuff, but they've been very open to innovation, extremely. And the problem with all these other countries is that you hand over your industry, you take it away, you could say, from one monopolist and hand it over to another monopolist and expect innovation to happen. M-Pesa is policing and gatekeeping fintech in Kenya. That's the reality. Yeah. And until Kenyans are willing to fight that battle of saying, M-Pesa, by law, you need to open up your APIs to anybody who wants to build on top of it, because this is national infrastructure, you're not going to get any results. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? So, and that's where the ecosystem needs to go in Kenya and in other African countries, where they say, look, Oga, we gave you monopoly access. Well, what you owe us in return is this. So rather than, the reason why Nigeria is working well is actually NIBS, which is obviously owned by CBN and the banks, because the bank was intentional about enabling access for as many people who are licensed as possible. Gotcha. So that's why you're seeing the innovation happen. But if they had handed it over to banks or they had handed it over to telcos, what's happening in all these other markets will be happening in our market as well. So it's NIBS and CBN that really deserve the credit. Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
I think it's critical to give credit where it's due. I think that's
absolutely. They've done an amazing job. That's just a fact. They've done an amazing. All this Paystack, Flutterwave, CBN don't need credit here. They are the ones that own the credit. That's the truth.
Fair. All right. Somebody has a very interesting question. You know, we asked about physical investments. So somebody, Michael Watson, wants to know: do you invest in farming? In this case, fish.
So, look, I think here's my play on farming. I actually think a lot about agriculture, but I'm looking for plays that are, I don't want to say globally relevant, but I'm at least looking for plays that are Pan-African relevant. So let me tell you, the biggest deal I made this year was in agriculture.
Okay.
It's a company called Relief. And what they do is they build, I see them as the John Deere of Africa. So what they do is hardware startup. So all the stereotypes are blown apart with my largest investment. So I'm not a software guy. I'm not a only type on your laptop guy. You understand what I'm saying? My biggest investment this year was guys. They have a machine that cracks palm kernel nuts. And if you understand the palm oil value chain, glycerine is in more than 50% of products in your supermarkets.
Okay.
Right? So it's a very important resource the world over, right? Global product. But the process of getting to glycerine is you take palm oil, you crush it, you refine it, and then it turns to glycerine, and that goes on your Indomie, it goes on most of your colored food products, all sorts of stuff. And then that's all the solids that remove your makeup, all that stuff, right? And then it goes, like, it's exported to create all of that. Now, what these guys do is they build a machine. Normally, if you want to crack those palm kernel nuts, women will sit in the village using stones to crack it. It'll take 3 days. By the time they finish, the thing has rotted, all sorts. These guys build a machine that efficiently cracks the shells, puts them in a machine, and uses the shell casings to fuel the machine. So it's completely circular. You get what I'm trying to say? And I gave them a lot of money. They made a lot of money. Gave them money to expand their factory, help them set up in a free trade zone, all that kind of stuff. So I'm willing to invest in things that are unusual, but there has to be an angle that makes sense. It can't just be fish farming for a local market of people who want to eat fish. I'm not sure that's really our beat. Do you get what I'm trying to say? But if you're doing something interesting with the fish farming, I want to have a conversation. There's something I'm looking at in Port Harcourt. They are a hatchery. So they hatch all sorts of eggs, from snakes to chickens to...
Is it from snakes?
Snakes, yeah, snakes.
Is there a commercial market for snakes?
Snake bags, snake leather bags. Oh, do you think it just shows up? Oh God, you gotta think calm. So I'm saying I'm willing to look for value in places everybody is, even snake venom. What if we were telling us snake venom, all sorts, right? So you get what I'm trying to say. So I mean, at the end of the day, there are opportunities in agri that we're excited about, but it has to make sense. I'm looking at another one, insect farming.
Okay.
Yeah, because insects are a source of high protein. People can process them into protein bars and stuff like that. I'm looking at that.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
Right. So we'll go. I have to clarify on something you said earlier. You said only 1% of VC investment in Africa is going into seed stage. Is that correct?
Yes. That was what our research showed. Another research showed it was.
So was that Nigeria or Africa?
Africa.
Interesting. Africa. Okay.
Yeah. That's what our research showed. But I think somebody else has now come up with research that says 5% of seed stage investments are going into 5%. I would love somebody to do a study that's proper. When we have money, we'll do it.
I think AVCA says 5%.
Yeah.
I think AVCA says 5%. So that's
So we'll see.
Okay,
I would also love it to be compared to other countries. Like how much compared to the US or whatever, how much is going to seed stage? Because I think it's very important, very, very important research.
Okay, all right. So John Kibe from Kenya wants to know, what is the best way to approach the markets for a product in emerging tech, especially in Africa, I guess, that doesn't really have enough documentation from research, or that tech companies haven't pioneered this sector already, basically?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I've seen quite a number of those, and honestly, it pains me that we're limited in our ability to help there. But it's something that I'm thinking about. So I think the biggest thing you can do is, I'll be honest with you. I'm sorry, I'm not a don't
sugarcoat it.
I think you should get on a plane and go to the US. That's my advice, right? Go to the US, find a nice university that's willing to incubate the research for you, because that validation is critical to you getting funding. And then, bring back the research. And in fact, the Nigerian people might not even smell it. Do you understand what I'm saying? But please remember us. We're really good guys. And we can give you some tips on how to get your research into a nice postdoctoral program in the US where they have resources to enable your research.
Fascinating. I mean, that's definitely a huge gap in the ecosystem.
Oh, yeah, huge.
Let me drill down. Let me challenge you on that, because, I mean, there's good people at Unilag. There's good people in Ife.
Absolutely.
in governance. There's good people in
Yeah.
a number of universities there. And aside of they're good students, they're good professors, they're experienced people. We've got to be able to fund research here somehow or the other. We can't.
We are speaking the same language.
Yeah.
We're speaking the same language, but you know the reality on the ground. You and I know that the reality on the ground is that not enough resources. This type of research is funded by governments.
Yeah, true. Right? So for the audience, anywhere else in the world, the government is funding this thing, and they're not putting $100 million in this thing. They're putting billions into research. You
can even start with basic grants. You don't even need 100 billion. Save is too much. See, you can put 30,000 to research and get good results. Honest to God.
Yeah, no, but
if the government is really serious, and I think they are, to be very honest with you, I think there's some really smart people in government that are thinking about something, and you see something will be announced soon. But they're really like, if someone was serious about it, we should set up a fund, get all these development agencies to pour the money in. That fund is a useless fund. I'm sorry to say, they just build buildings that nobody needs. If they're serious, TED fund, somebody's talking about TED fund. I'm like, TED fund is useless. They're a useless fund. They're supposed to be doing this work, but they are useless. They're not doing anything. And they need to be challenged on what they are doing with all our money. They say they fund research, but they fund research for their friends, not for people that deserve it. Otherwise, they should be making it open. And they fund people to go abroad and fund university, all sorts of nonsense. It needs to change. Seriously, it's unfortunate. TED fund should be doing it. That person is very right, but they're not doing it. And we have to work on that. That's the reality. We do. But right now, if I'm giving you non-sugar-coated advice, if you say I should not be sugar-coated, go and look for a postdoc program that will, or a postgraduate program where you can go and develop your research fully. The good thing about working in emerging tech or frontiers of tech is that you don't have competition, so you have some time. You get what I'm saying? So better for you to just quietly follow that path and get your research out and do what you need to do.
Gotcha. Okay. Dare Oguneku wants to know if tech can lower the cost of healthcare and can it power insurance effectively?
I think tech can do a lot of stuff to lower cost and increase access. I mean, that's what it exists for. So when we talk about, I was having a conversation with a company, very interesting company, that's building kind of like the enabling software for health insurance, right? And we're having a conversation about what can their software do to lower the cost of healthcare. And I was like, have you ever thought about smart routing? Like you have all the data about all these different things that, health insurance plans are paying for. You know what's the lowest price is, you know what the highest price is. Can you just smart route them intelligently based on price and quality or geography and so on and so forth? And they were like, wow, I never thought about that way. So there's a lot of things. I even think, one of the things I'm looking forward to is a world where doctors can exist outside of hospitals. Because I've never really seen, the whole concept of a hospital as a full-on thing. I haven't stepped into a hospital in the last 7 years. Not because I'm not healthy. I fall sick sometimes, but I just call my doctor. And my doctor, like, if I need to be in a hospital, in terms of like sleep in a hospital, he will arrange for it to happen. But most times, it's not that kind of illness. Do you get what I'm trying to say? So I think that's where we need to be going. How can we empower doctors with technology tools so that they can take care of the people from all over the world? They can be a walking, talking hospital. I think that's a huge frontier that we have not really explored as an ecosystem with the healthcare industry.
Gotcha. Okay, we are coming to the end of this, but let's see if there's something really interesting that we should get into. Martin Obodo wants to know, what's the future of enterprise software in Africa? Aside of fintech, why aren't we seeing as much innovation in enterprise software like in the West,
So I think Corona is going to change that if we hang on to the opportunity. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, I think a lot of companies, okay, let me be very honest as a preface, right? A lot of our companies' enterprise value is actually divorced from their performance in the market, which is a big problem, right? Like, they're not living or dying by efficiency. They're living or dying by government largesse or, constructed monopolies and stuff like that. So that makes it difficult to penetrate because no one really gets any big kicker from more efficiency that technology can bring. Now, for those that are ambitious enough to want that much more efficiency, then the question is now education, digital transformation. How can you help understand their problems, which are very different from problems elsewhere, and build solutions that cater to those, and then deal with all the evil forces and dark forces within the enterprise that wants the Egunje to continue. And you can only do that with a very strong mandate from the founder of the enterprise. And many of those founders are older. They don't really understand what's going on. I think that we might want to wait for them to die and then their kids to take over. And then we would now start to see the efficiency. Like, I mean, look at the companies that are actually successfully digitally transformed in Nigeria, like Gig Motors. I mean, Oga had to, you know, his son had to come in and blaze a new trail.
Come in and like really
and I'm seeing that happen across the board where, you know, I mean, people are older. Look at FCMB, right? Like the Oga had to be like, look, I'm tired. I want to go back and sit down and spend your son.
Yeah.
So I think as you see more of these big men, enterprise guys kind of step back and their kids step up to lead their companies, they will want to lead it in a fundamentally new direction, because government largesse cannot be guaranteed for such a long period of time, especially in such a shifting economic circumstance. So I think we should just be looking to build relationship with their kids. That's my opinion. And just avoid the parents entirely.
Amir Abdul Fattah wants to know, why doesn't Iyin live in Africa? Iyin, why don't you live in Africa?
I'm in Benin. Hey, why don't I live in Africa now? Wow. Anyway, you know, I don't allow it to be known that I live in Africa, because the dark forces and evil forces that are looking for me, there are plenty. So it pays for me to be hovering in the clouds where I live, where I really live. But honest to God, I spent like most of my time on the continent, to be honest. I don't travel abroad more than 3 months a year, especially because of taxes.
Yeah. Okay, I have an interesting one from Sheba Ibrahim. My question is, how can young Nigerian millennials, you know, essentially keep up with the speed of the globe? You know, when you're sitting in a country where, you know, you've been home for 8 months, the data, artificial science, everything is sweeping every industry globally, and you're sitting down here with no light. I think that's the essence of Sheba's question.
No, look. You need to create a plan to divorce yourself from your physical circumstances. That's the only way to survive Nigeria. You need to build a plan. And what does that mean? It means you work on the internet. You understand what I'm saying? It means you have tools that help you work on the internet. There's a in the wake of the coronavirus, we had to be sending, I think some companies were also sending their employees power bank things that you can charge for 2 weeks and stuff. I forget the name of the company that was doing it. It's one of these companies, but it was like a solar powered thing that you could take to your house and then plug it, like a battery pack for laptops. Buy those things, right? But you know, I'll tell you, if you're a university student, you are in the university, but don't make the university a goal for you. The education you're receiving there is not useful in the modern world. Just take the certificates, give it to your parents after graduation, and just know you've done what they want you to do. But you need to build a future for yourself that is divorced from the realities that the Nigerian government and the Nigerian society have imposed on you. That's the only way to thrive. And the internet offers you a portal to that life and to that world. Take it. Take that portal, escape. You don't necessarily need to apply to Canada to escape, or at least until you are applying to Canada. You know, you can start by leveraging the internet and looking at the opportunities the internet affords you. You need to get in that mindset. Otherwise, you're going to be dependent on the state. And this is the problem. The state takes away all your agency. That is its primary function. It needs you to be dependent on it, so it can take away your right to choose, your right to speak, your right to do, your right to oppose it. And the battle that all of us in the African tech ecosystem have to fight for ourselves and for all the people who look up to us as a beacon of light is that we are here to give you choice. That's it, We're here to
That's
give
that's a really good point to kind of be wrapping this up. Thank you. I think this has been a fascinating conversation. We've gone some places that I don't think anybody, including my team, was expecting us to go. But I think a lot of this conversation matters. We really need to have impact beyond the tech industry, those of us playing within this space. I really like this final point of yours about, for those of you coming into the industry, or those of you trying to understand how to have an impact in a global world that's moving so quickly, you need to be able to connect with the world and to build your own opportunities. Like, do not be limited by the environment in which you are physically. And I see this every day. I mean, I see people sort of like building brilliant careers out of Nigerian universities. And you ask, well, what did you do in that university? And it's like, I mean, I got the degree, but I spent most of my time teaching myself the things that matter, you know? And I think that's absolutely critical for people. There's a lot of opportunity to build companies that matter and to do things that have impact. If you think you're building one of those companies, then reach out to future.africa and talk to them and apply. There's a survey for everyone who's attending this. Can you please fill it out? They'll drop the link in the chat. So please do fill it out. And if you're not subscribed to our newsletter, I saw somebody asking, how do you become an influencer in the tech industry? How do you like get in?
You get stuff done.
Sign up for our newsletter every day and read what the big players are doing. Come for these talks, hear how people are thinking about technology, how people are thinking about impact. I think learning as much as possible is the way you start to sort of become a real player and a real sort of have real impact in the industries. Understanding the way people think about it, understanding the way money thinks, understanding how to build products for value. And our newsletter will show you a lot of kind of how investors think, how product designers think, how economists think about the market. So spend some time on that. We'll do more of these. I think there's a couple more coming up, and you should definitely sign up and join them. The next event is December 4th. So please sign up for it and come join us on December 4th for that. E, thank you so much for joining us today.
You're welcome.
Look forward to, I'm sure we'll be talking again very shortly about
naturally
all the other ways that we're trying to build things. Thanks everyone for joining us. Have a great day.
All right.